Good evening. I'm Jaleesa Dubrov. It's 9 p.m. and this is America Now. And we continue following breaking news just into the newsroom. The United States has launched another round of strikes inside of Iran. And while the Pentagon says that these attacks are about protecting the shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, the targets don't seem to reflect that. CENTCOM says the strikes were designed to degrade Iran's ability to threaten commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. But Iranian media reports say the strikes reached far beyond military sites. The Mehed news agency reports that one strike landed near a children's cancer hospital in the city of Afaz. A doctor from the facility said the hospital treats many bedridden patients undergoing chemotherapy who have now been forced to relocate to a different location. There are additional reports of other strikes that hit areas around the country. Early reports had also indicated strikes on a barracks housing conscripts from Iran's 388th Brigade, along with damage to industrial facilities, including wheat silos and mineral water processing plants. So here's the question. If the objective is to protect commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, how do strikes near a children's hospital, on industrial facilities, or on barracks full of conscripts protect commercial shipping? Because the Pentagon continues to frame these operations as protecting the freedom of navigation, right? But many military analysts, a lot of military analysts, can tell you that it doesn't take an entire military to open the strait. It takes mines, drones, anti-ship missiles. So what exactly is the strategy here? At the same time, President Trump continues to say diplomacy is still possible. In an interview with Fox News, he said his representatives had spoken with Iranian officials an hour just before the interview. He did the thing where he says they called him, he called them, and they want to make a deal. But his message was not about compromise. It was simple. He says, make a deal or there won't be anything left. Listen.
3 days ago, we had a deal.
When was the last time you spoke with an Iranian official?
Well, not me, but let's say my representatives. I have spoken to them, but my representatives over the course of, well, actually, an hour ago.
And what message was delivered?
They want to make a deal, but every time they make a deal, they break it. They don't want to die. People don't want to die. Yeah, about an hour ago.
And what message was delivered?
You better make a deal. You're not going to have anybody left.
These contradictions, they don't even begin to scrape the surface. In fact, during this war, we've been told at least 32 times, 32, that the U.S. has either won the war with Iran or that Iran's military has been defeated. Statements of absolute victory, just like the ones that you just heard. We know negotiations are still continuing, but what we're hearing doesn't sound like that. It sounds like ultimatums. So if diplomacy is still alive, it certainly just does not look like it. Despite this, Iran continues to retaliate. New videos appear to show missile strikes targeting U.S. and its allies' military facilities in Jordan, Kuwait, and even Bahrain, striking their air bases, missile defense sites, and other military installations. This is clearly very different target set from the United States compared to civilian infrastructure being struck in Iran, elementary schools, and wheat silos. So let's consider that there's also a cost. A video from the region appears to show U.S.-made Patriot missiles being fired repeatedly to intercept Iranian ballistic missiles. Each Patriot interceptor costs millions of dollars. The Iranian missiles they're trying to shoot down cost just a fraction of that. And in some cases, those interceptors completely miss. That's a cost exchange that the United States absolutely cannot sustain forever. And then there's the human cost. Current estimates suggest that the death toll from this war is between 9,000 and even more than 18,000 people across the region. That includes Iranian soldiers, Lebanese civilians, Hezbollah fighters, and casualties all across the Gulf. But take note that so far no American civilian deaths have been reported. So tonight, the bombing continues. The death toll of civilians is rising in the region. American taxpayers continue to pay more and more to fund this war. And despite all of that, we actually still don't have a clear objective of where we're going with this. So is this about protecting shipping? Is it about deterrence? Are we actually trying to force or obtain a peace deal? Right now, it doesn't look like the war is going to come to an end or any of that is coming. It looks like we're actually just going to continue feeding lives and billions into a war machine that doesn't even have an off switch. Joining me now to discuss, we have host of The Deep State, John Kiriakou. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So I want to ask you, first of all, the MOU that was signed, the Memorandum of Understanding between Iran and the United States, it was implemented and signed in June and then quickly collapsed in July. with your former experience as a former CIA analyst, do you feel like this memorandum of understanding was a true negotiation for peace, or do you think it was just buying time for both parties to prepare?
Oh, I do not think that it was a peace agreement of any kind. It was a temporary ceasefire, and that's exactly what it ended up being, temporary. The truth of the matter is that the Obama administration had negotiated a deal with the Iranians. The deal was actually working. It was called the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. It was scrapped by Donald Trump in his first term because he said he could do so much better. And here we are, 12 years later, and we're not better. Things are worse off.
Do you think that that might be because, for the Trump administration, this is, I think, an administration that has been one of the closest and allied and enmeshed with Israel. Do you think that this is the reason that we're seeing that uptick in aggression for intervention in Iran, and maybe even every time that we have an opportunity for peace, it collapses or gets...
I do believe that. And we're seeing now for the very first time real splits at high levels between the American and Israeli governments. Just this afternoon, Vice President J.D. Vance appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast, a very important and influential podcast here in the United States, in which he took direct aim at the Israeli government and criticized the Israeli government because they do not want the United States to make peace with Iran. And so we're seeing this real division. Another thing, too, and I've said this several times in the past, but I think it bears repeating. The Israelis, regardless of who the prime minister happened to be, every time they would come to Washington, beginning during the Reagan presidency, they would ask the president to bomb Iran, saying that Iran is an existential threat. Iran had a nuclear weapons program. They were developing a delivery system for whatever nuclear weapon they were developing. And every single president said, no, we're not going to bomb Iran, until this president. And now we're in over our heads. Remember, to quote unquote win, the Iranians just have to survive. And the only way that the United States is going to be able to overthrow this government is through a large-scale land invasion, which will never, ever happen. The Iranians also have time on their side, in that they know that public opinion in the United States has turned against this policy. And they know that the policy has led to this split with the Israelis. And so the Iranians have an incentive to actually drag this out for as long as possible.
So they're able to capitalize on that divide. They recognize that. And I agree with you on the aspect that they are able to maintain this tempo that the United States has not yet matched with them. So then on the topic of Israel and this divide and pushing the United States to bomb Iran, do you see a reality where the United States or even Israel sends troops on the ground inside of Iran?
No, I don't see that as a possibility at all. What most Americans don't understand is that Iran is the size of the whole of Western Europe. It has almost 93 million people. It's something like 3.5 times the population of Iraq. And so, no, I don't see it as a possibility. And even if it was physically possible, there's no national consensus to even have the kind of war we have now, let alone a ground war against Iran.
Israel is so, they have this, it's just such a strong conviction and will to influence the United States government to continue the war with Iran. But you see, like you said, prior administrations and presidents have absolutely said no to this. They will not be invading Iran or going to war with Iran. What incentives does the Trump administration have to do this? Why now?
You know, I think this is the ugly face of money in politics. And I think that Donald Trump's biggest supporters financially have a vested interest in war with Iran. And we're seeing it playing out now. When you have the likes of Miriam Adelson, for example, who is the single largest donor to the Trump campaign, demanding war with Iran, we're going to have war with Iran, whether it's in the national interest or not. And I think that the Israelis, for their part, were able to convince Donald Trump that this was going to be a 2 or 3 day war. That once the Iranian government was decapitated, once the military leadership was killed and taken out, that the entire government would fall like a house of cards, that democracy would be reestablished, maybe even in the form of the former crown prince of Iran returning, and no such thing happened. And there was no plan B, and now we're stuck.
So they continue to try and cut off the head of the snake, and it clearly has not been successful. So,
it's a hydra.
Exactly. And
every time you cut the head, two heads grow in its place.
And we multiply. So then, given your experience as a former CIA analyst and just being in the CIA behind the desk, but also in the field, they tried to take out, or they did successfully assassinate Ali Khamenei in Iran. But if anything, it looks like they've galvanized the population.
And not just of Iran, but of Iraq as well. Because Iraq is a majority Shia Muslim country, and they venerated Ayatollah Khamenei as well.
They did, and Donald Trump actually had a visit with the leader of Iraq, and he...
Yes.
What do you think came of that? Why do you think he's taking a special interest in Iraq right now?
I will say I was downtown in Washington yesterday when the president of Iraq was in town, and I was surprised at the reception that he was afforded. Most of central Washington was completely shut down to traffic. This was a very big deal. And I think that, on the one hand, Iraq and the United States have actually warm relations behind closed doors. And I think that the president of Iraq is one of the very few people who can go to the White House and say, you have really made a grave mistake. You've got to fix this. We're not hearing that, of course, from the Israelis. We're hearing exactly the opposite. And the Gulf countries would just, they wish things would just go back to normal, the way they were before the hostilities began. But I think we're going to get it straight from the Iraqis.
Really? So what kind of influence do you think that the Iraqis would have on the Trump administration
well,
to halt operations overall? Certainly not to divest from the Israeli cause whatsoever, right?
No, not much, unfortunately. But what we do need is allies telling us that changes have to be made. We're not hearing it from the Egyptians. We're not hearing it from the Jordanians. We're certainly not hearing it from the Gulf Arabs. At least we get it from the Iraqis.
So then my final question here would be for you is, what is the final outcome? What do you see happening? Do you see a worst case scenario, some black swan operation, end all be all for the United States? If Iran were to be successful in this war and win, what does that look like? What does success look like here?
Honestly, I think that the way this is going to end is we'll come up with some sort of ceasefire agreement again, where Iran maintains control of the Strait of Hormuz. After all, it's Iranian territorial water. And we wake up one morning and Donald Trump has tweeted overnight or posted on Truth Social, we win, it's all over. This is a great victory for the United States, the greatest victory of modern times. Our men and women in the military are heroes, and everybody comes home, and we just pretend that the thing never happened.
And that would be the 33rd time that we would have won the same war in a matter of like 5 months. Awesome.
Right.
Thank you so much, John Kiriakou, for your time.
Thank you.
In a recent trip to the NATO summit in Ankara, President Trump struck several arms deals with allies, all after years of demanding NATO members pay their fair share into the alliance coffers. RT's Isabella Bloomberg has now giving us an exclusive look at the problem that the U.S. has created by offering protection while collecting fees along the way.
Forget diplomacy and alliances. Washington's formula is brutally simple. Create and exploit a crisis. Then offer protection. But protection, as they say, is never free. Smash the shop window, rattle the owner, then knock on the door offering help for a cut of the till. This is the reality of U.S. foreign policy. One side pays, one side fights, and Trump takes a cut. Take the Gulf. Trump floated 20% straight off the top. Protection fee, plain and simple. But that was a hard sell, so the invoice got a makeover. Instead of a direct fee, the Gulf monarchies would be signing trade deals, investing in American firms, buying American.
And we're not going to put it up. Yeah, I want to be reimbursed because we're protecting a very rich portion of the world. We're spending money. And so what we've done is we are going to be reimbursed for protection. You have Saudi Arabia, you have UAE, you have Qatar, or Qatar as I always say, you have Qatar, Bahrain.
And Washington provides its supposed security umbrella, all while Israel does the heavy lifting. So the Gulf invests while America collects. And the invoice isn't always paid in dollars. Let's take a look at what's going on in Iraq. For Trump, the price comes through access to oil and contracts, American companies moving in.
We haven't been dealing very much over the last 4 or 5 years with the previous administration. Iraq has tremendous potential because of their oil and because of other things, but because of their oil. And we're going to be doing a lot of deals. We're going to create a lot of jobs for both countries, and we're going to be taking out a lot of oil. And that's one of the reasons that I felt so strongly that this was going to be a great prime minister, and I fought for that.
So here we see a different country and a different payment method, but the transaction ultimately stays the same. Let's take a look now at Europe. The invoice looks strikingly similar, only the currency has changed. Brussels buys the weapons, American-made of course, yet Ukraine does the dime. And Trump made the terms of payment very clear, very early.
I came in, I made a speech, and I said, you got to pay up. They asked me that question. One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills. And the money came flowing in. If they don't pay, I'm not going to defend them. No, I'm not going to defend them. I got into a lot of heat when I said that. He said, oh, he's violating NATO.
And guess what? It's working. Europe is now scrambling to buy American hardware to send to Kyiv, while the U.S. defense industry logs a profit. Even Washington's officials are admitting it out loud.
And one part of that, of course, is Pearl, is the initiative where European countries buy U.S. weapons transferred to NATO for the fight in Ukraine to bring peace to that conflict.
Now look east, where the same formula is taking shape. In the Pacific, Taiwan gets the weapons, yet curiously, Japan and South Korea partially foot the bill, paying through bigger defense budgets, U.S.-based costs, and American arms purchases. But Taiwan is the twist. Washington sells billions in weapons while keeping its defense commitment deliberately unclear, because for Beijing, those arms are a red line, and for Washington, a bargaining chip.
Would the U.S. defend Taiwan if it came to it?
I don't want to say. I'm not going to say that. There's only one person that knows that. You know who it is? Me. I'm the only person. That question was asked to me today by President Xi. I said, I don't talk about that.
He asked you today?
He asked you if you would send troops. He asked me if I'd defend them. I said, I don't talk about that.
But here's the problem. Taiwan pays billions for American weapons, while deliveries lag, and Washington keeps its ultimate commitment deliberately unclear. So from Taipei to Kyiv to the Middle East, the shakedown is the same. America creates the crisis, then charges you for the solution. The fine print is always the same too. Pay up or face the consequences.
The International Space Station recently welcomed 2 Russian cosmonauts and 1 American astronaut aboard the station. The trio will spend approximately 8 months in space with plans to conduct 2 spacewalks during their mission. RT got an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at this week's preparation leading up to the launch.
2 weeks before launch, the prime and backup crews arrive at Baikonur. This marks the beginning of pre-launch quarantine. Its main purpose is to protect the crew's health and allow them to complete their final preparations without disruption.
It feels like everything is ready. This is the speed at which we will just fly into space, and nothing will stop us.
We're already on the finish line. Everything is ready. We're ready. All the hardware is ready. Now the only thing that's left is to get it all working together and embark on our journey.
One of the key stages at Baikonur is the final inspection of the spacecraft. For the first time, the crew works inside the actual Soyuz that will take them to the station.
Something different about being in it with all the equipment packed in, and you just had a good sense of how much space you'll have. And it's just very surreal and hard to imagine that this thing will fly to space.
The crew inspects everything inside, all the equipment, its condition, and then we put on the spacesuits and do the same thing in the spacesuits.
You've got to be under hours-long observation, stay focused while preparing for the flight. Basically, you have to think ahead of time, give a prognosis of what is awaiting us and the next move we make.
Here's how we train while on the orthopedic surgical table before the launch. It helps us prepare our cardiovascular system for the flight, particularly for zero-gravity conditions.
After spacecraft inspections, training sessions, and medical procedures, the crew returns to the restricted area. Here, everyday life continues, as far as everyday life is possible just days before a space flight.
I like to go running outside. We just run in circles, kind of like a laboratory rat. But it's fun. But we also have some games.
The cosmonauts speak to their families every day. Relatives who come to Baikonur can meet the crew, but only through a glass partition.
Since quarantine is one of the most important moments, of course, we can't communicate directly with our loved ones, as we usually do.
My daughter's really interested in the spacesuits. My son, I don't know that he's interested in space at all. But he likes to read books, so sometimes we talk about Harry Potter.
And of course, we are going to miss what we leave behind on Earth during the launch. But what joy it will be to come back to it again. This is a loss, one way or another. But we are prepared for it. We do what we love, and we look forward to what we have been doing for so long.
On launch day, the waiting is over. The crew leaves quarantine and begins the final journey to the launch pad and to the spacecraft waiting to carry them into orbit.
The first thing I'll do when the hatch opens, I'll greet the station itself. I'll say it like, "Good to see you," or "Hi."
And that's America Now. I'm Jaleesa Dubrov. For more stories, visit our website at rt.com and join us every night at 7, 8, 9, and 10. Thank you for watching. Have a good night, and remember to question everything.